We're spending $15 to $20 billion on a census. We're doing everything. We're finding out everything about everybody. Think of it. $15 to $20 billion, and you're not allowed to ask them, are you a citizen? And by the way, if you look at the history of our country, it's almost always been asked. So we're fighting very hard against a system that's a very difficult system.
President Trump confirming reports that he's considering using an executive order to move forward with the battle over the census question. This, as the Justice Department is saying just moments ago, that it's exploring options to add the citizenship question on the 2020 census. Edward Lawrence is at the White House with the latest. Edward.
Yeah, the Justice Department indicated to a federal judge in Maryland they are going forward with continuing the legal battle to get that question back on the census. There, President Donald Trump saying himself that he has his own options. Listen.
We can start the printing now and maybe do an addendum after we get a positive decision. So we're working on a lot of things, including an executive order.
Now, that executive order, if he goes that route, would restart the legal process. And the president, you heard there, said they could have an addendum added to that that adds that question. Now, he was tweeting about this subject over the July 4th holiday, saying, so important for our country that the very simple and basic, are you a citizen of the United States question, be allowed to be asked on the 2020 census. Now, privately, the president's been questioning whether the Department of Justice or the Commerce Department maybe gave up a little too easily or didn't go too far or far enough. Now, last week, the U.S. Supreme Court blocked the question, saying the administration failed to articulate an adequate explanation. And Democratic presidential hopefuls has latched onto this, weighing in and tying it to the immigration debate.
Right here in the heartland, communities that might not have had a chance otherwise are growing because of immigration. This is a time when we should be as welcoming as possible, and for so many people who lack a pathway to citizenship, we've got to fix that. The citizenship question is motivated by racial and partisan reasons. It has no business in something that's supposed to be neutral.
And the Commerce Department says they've already started the process to print out the census. However, the president, as you heard, he believes that they can add an addendum later should they win this legal battle. Back to you, Charles.
Edward, thank you very much. I want to bring in attorney Misty Marris on this. All right, so your thoughts of where we are right now legally?
Well, look, so right now the Supreme Court had left the door open. They never said that the question itself was improper. They just required the administration to provide additional rationale or different rationale than what was provided before. So what we saw today was the Maryland court, this is the federal court where a case is pending, say, look, we need clarity on what's going to happen. And the Department of Justice apparently said, we're moving forward with this fight. They said in a conference call today with that judge that they needed time to get evidence together, to gather that, and to prepare something to show rationale that's different than what was previously given to the court.
So President Trump, though, alluded to the fact that this question used to be on the census, right? So it's not unusual that it appeared there. It was under a different sort of administrations, I would suppose, Republicans and Democrats, so it wouldn't necessarily be racial. Why? How much more information would the Supreme Court need to go ahead and make a decision here?
Yeah, look, so what the Supreme Court said was that under the Administrative Procedures Act, which requires any administrative agency to give the why they're making a change, they said that what the reason provided that it was to enforce the Voting Rights Act was at odds with the evidence presented. So, Charles, you bring up a great point. It's not about whether or not the question itself poses a constitutional concern. It was about what the evidence showed as for the reasoning. So they're going to have to show a different reasoning. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be based in the Voters' Rights Act or something of the like. Again, there's been no indication that this is to identify non-citizens. This is about identifying voters. It's just going to be the way that it's presented and articulated and backed up by evidence.
Is this an unusual ruling, though, that for the Supreme Court to come up with that? From what I've read from some legal scholars saying that their rationale for sending this back is nonsensical because that it shouldn't even be part of the questioning. It's
interesting that you bring that up because in the partial dissents that were written by other conservative judges, they said, look, you're basically saying that this we can't move forward with this question because you're not really buying the explanation, not necessarily on the legal basis for including the question. So, yes, it was unusual, and I think that we're going to see many more legal challenges with this issue. So, Charles, what happens is now the Supreme Court's essentially kicked that back to the lower court. But the lower court has another issue that the Supreme Court has not faced yet, which as of today we know is moving forward. And that's an argument that's going to be presented in Maryland, in this Maryland federal court, that there was a discriminatory animus, and that's why the administration was seeking to put this forward. So that's a different legal question. So really, it's being up against a timeline to get the census out.
My producer's going to get angry, and I got to wrap it. I got to ask you, because many people are wondering, is this the Chief Justice Roberts that conservatives thought they were getting when he was nominated for the job?
I think the backlash here is that they did not expect this, that he's the new swing judge, and we don't know which way he's going to go on some of these issues.
Wow. Misty, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Charles.